Good afternoon. My name is Emily Lucero. I'm a massage therapist and herbalist. I've been working in Santa Fe, New Mexico for over 30 years. I've also got a background in emergency medical training and emergency medicine. I been doing this stuff since I was a kid. My mother's a nurse, and I saw a lot of stuff like this at home. So hopefully this will be a good way for you to learn what to keep in your home, cheap, easy, accessible, and highly, highly effective. If you'd like to see more of my bio, it's on our website. Okay, let's get started. The whole point of this class is that if you take care of an injury immediately, as quickly as possible, number one, things don't get as damaged, but also things heal very quickly. If you're healthy, you're strong, especially if you're young and you're active, if you've been getting exercises and taking good care of yourself, things heal very, very well. But the sooner you do it, the more efficient you are in your first steps, the better things will end for you and better things will heal. We also live in a time and place where emergency medicine is expensive. It's hard to access for a lot of people. Many communities don't even have it anymore. Over the counter medications and prescription medications can be very, very expensive. And again, sometimes not even accessible. So if you keep some of these things on hand, you know what to keep and you can really save yourself a lot of time and money and misery, and also really heal better. Why do we use herbal remedies, the things that I use, versus over-the-counter remedies and prescription medications and the Western medical system? Anything that you're going to get that's a drug has been concentrated and synthesized and has byproducts and side effects, and your body has to take care of those things. And so many of our pain medications have to be cleared through your kidneys or your liver or your skin, your lymph system. They have backlash effects, and then we have to clean ourselves up. And so they will, number one, really slow down your healing process and impede your digestion and your organ function over time. It's one thing to use them every now and then. When you have to do something regularly, they're really not good for you. Herbal remedies, on the other hand, work quickly, don't have the same side effects, and improve your healing process and help you eliminate waste products. So important for trying to get things healed is to clean things out and give yourself the nutrition you need. So I'm going to go through this kit that we want to keep you at home, want you to keep at home. This first page here, this slide, is about the things that we should keep in our home, whether they're natural or not. Hot and cold packs, ice packs. I always recommend baking soda and sea salt instead of Epsom salts. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's one of the best tools to keep in your home, is that combination, and cheap and easily accessible. Gauze and bandages, there's all kinds of them. Alcohol, rubbing alcohol is what we usually think of. But in a pinch, you can just use any kind of 80 proof or better alcohol that we make drinks out of. If you had a party and you have a little bit left over and someone's wounded, alcohol kills bugs. Excellent tool for that. I keep various bandages, not just these, but you can get bigger bandages. And I always keep, especially when I'm camping, an old white t-shirt that I can sacrifice to cutting up into bandages. It's big enough to wrap around something. This is one that I've used and sterilized. I keep them in my home and can use them as bandages when I need them. You'll need something that stretches. I use old stockings, old leggings. These things, sometimes people have them around, work really well, but you need to have things that will hold your bandages in place. Tape is important. This is the medical tape that people think of, but you can use any tape in a pinch. Just remember that. Super, super helpful. I have two items here that I think are really important. Tweezers and scissors, a little bitty scissor that has a tip on it that's sharp, and the same with your tweezers that are good pinching tools that you protect and you sterilize. I think I have on here cotton flour sack, which is another version of this, because it can show you how much blood is coming out of a wound if it's white. White is important. Cotton swabs and those kinds of things help you clean wounds. Hot water is always helpful. Um, and that's, I've already talked about my tape. Okay, next page, next slide is the remedies that are from the natural world that I'm going to talk about more today. Let me go through them pretty quickly. We keep arnica. We make our own arnica because this is an alcohol-based arnica that can penetrate deep into the joints and really alleviates inflammation and pain. Emergency tool like none other when you have a closed wound. There's a lot of them on the market, creams, oils, salves. They all work. That's something I wouldn't be in my home without. Castor oil, it's really important that you get a cold pressed castor oil. Any oil that we're going to show you today needs to be cold pressed because cold pressed means it doesn't have any hexane in it. Hexane is toxic to your liver and your kidneys, builds up in your system, and that's the reason we use cold pressed oils, especially topically. We're going to go to alfalfa, which is a wonderful multi-mineral supplement that is highly nutritive. It really helps us repair a wound. When you're healing, it's important to up your greens, and that's one of the best ways you can do it. We're going to talk about cayenne today. I have various types of cayenne here, all of which are super, super helpful. Cayenne is a great emergency tool. Clay. Bentonite clay is what I use because I use it internally as well as topically, but you can use any kind of clay to break up a scar. We'll talk about that later. Comfrey root is an old remedy called nip bone, and you can put it topically on a wound and it helps it pull itself back together. Herbs and pain for pain and inflammation. Our go-to is myrrh, golden seal, and cayenne. There's a lot of them out there. A lot of people use usmia and other types of infection herbs. But this is one of the oldest combinations because it has the cayenne, it has the myrrh and golden seal, and they come at wounds and infection from different directions, and it's very, very safe for long-term use. We always keep raw honey, preferably unfiltered, unpasteurized, and local. You're going to get the best effect for yourself from that if you use that. Wheat germ oil is super, super important for healing bad wounds. Keep that on hand as well. And then there are 4 basic homeopathic remedies that I use. The first one is called Bach Rescue Remedy. Super helpful for stress. Arnica comes in different sizes, different brands, different potencies, but always keeping arnica on hand. And then Symphytum and Hypericum are the other 2 that I recommend. Symphytum is for tissue repair. It's homeopathic comfrey. Hypericum is for nerve pain. And when you do all 3 of them together, all 4 of them together immediately, they start the healing rapidly. And then we make different remedies, plantain and nerve pain salve. Plantain is for itching, venomous, poisoning bites, and nerve pain. You always want to manage your nerve pain. It's what keeps people up at night, causes misery, and there are lots of different products. That is ours. And the last one that I'm going to point out to you is the herbs for repair. There are some on the market like this that work well. We make our own, but there's a lot of nutrition in them that's designed to help the tissues knit back together and repair themselves. And you can double or quadruple the rapidity of your healing if you give yourself the nutrition that you need. So these are the 5 things that I say, okay, if you're just not interested in all the rest of it, these are the things that you should keep always. cayenne, because you can put cayenne directly on a wound and it will stop the bleeding immediately. In addition to that, if somebody is bleeding internally or you think they might be, you can make them a tea of it or give them a squirt of the tincture, and it stabilizes all of the blood pressure and stops the bleeding. Tremendously helpful tool if you think there's bleeding, and it won't interfere with medications or surgery later, anything like that. Arnica, of course, we've talked about. Castor oil. Castor oil breaks up and clears out waste products. And so you can rub it on any closed wound and it's going to help you reduce the inflammation, ease the pain and the pressure on the nerves, and increase your healing. Contrast therapy is something I want to define for you because I'm not sure not everybody understands that term, which means going back and forth between hot packs and cold packs. In your first 3 days of a new injury, you're going to want to use ice. There's always a lot of inflammation up front. But when an injury is older than that, you're going to need to go back and forth between ice and heat. And that clears out waste products, increases inflammation, reduces pain. And the basic rule of thumb for contrast therapy is 10 to 20 minutes of ice, wait an hour, 10 to 20 minutes of heat, wait an hour, 20 minutes of ice, wait an hour, 20 minutes of heat. More or less, those timings can be a little bit off, but when you need to get your inflammation and your pain down, it's an incredible tool that's free. If you have a freezer and a hot kettle or a microwave oven, you can use anything to create ice and heat. Just take something frozen out of the freezer. Peas work excellently for that. You can put something in the microwave and warm it up, wrap a towel about it. There's your heat. There's all kinds of tools on the market. It doesn't matter what you use. It matters that you use them and that you contrast them. Therapeutics baths are baking soda and sea salt in the bath. Because what they do is they clear out waste products and balance all of the electrolytes in your body. Many people use Epsom salt, which balances your magnesium and then leaves all your tissues really, really dry, which you need nourished, moist tissues to heal. You can't just deplete them of all these other minerals and expect them to heal. They'll relieve the pain temporarily, but it doesn't add to your healing. It impedes your healing. Whereas baking soda and sea salt cleans the waste products out, balances all your electrolytes, and helps your body use what you give it next. And that's what I mean by a therapeutic bath, where you get in a full bath with a handful of each of those in there. Soak for anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour. Temperature doesn't matter. Whatever's comfortable is fine. You get out of the bath, rinse it off with clear water, and then you add your topical remedies that you're going to be using after that. Our class is going to follow this order: new wounds that are open, new wounds that are closed, chronic and old ones, and then soreness at the end. So first aid is where we start with an open wound. And first of all, you just need to understand that not everybody is cut out to be an emergency person. Some people look at wounds and just can't handle it. If you know that about yourself, don't step into a situation like this. Call a neighbor, call someone from the other room, call 911. Get the help you need. Know who you are. That's really, really important. Because people who get into a situation like that don't know what they're doing, impede the process of healing, create more problems than they solve. So I think that's personal for everybody. I've never had a problem with it because I grew up around it. It doesn't bother me. I do well in those circumstances. And so know that about yourself. If you feel like you can step in for an emergency, this is where you start. Airway, breathing, and circulation. This is basic ABCs of first aid. When you walk onto a scene and you assess the situation, is someone breathing? Is there an open airway that they're able to breathe through? And if that airway is open, are they breathing? And is there bleeding going on? Either possibly internally, but definitely externally. That's the first thing you do. And if you don't see an airway, that's where you stop. You figure out if you can safely get an airway. And if you don't know how to do that, you just call 911 or call the neighbor. If they're breathing, then or not breathing, and you know how to apply CPR, do CPR, do CPR. If you don't, you walk away. But most people can see that someone's bleeding if they're bleeding. And so one of the most important things you'll do for bleeding is to put some cayenne, either in the form of powder or tincture. You can keep capsules and open up capsules directly on a bleeding wound. And then you put a clean cloth over that and you apply pressure with whatever you have, even if it's just your hands. And generally within a couple minutes, that slows the bleeding. If bleeding is still profuse, you can take some tincture and put in a little bit of water or put it directly in their mouth. And that will stabilize blood pressure from the inside and stop the bleeding from the inside. So this is one of your number one tools for bleeding. The other thing I want to point out here is Rescue Remedy. Rescue Remedy was designed for high altitude rescues in the Alps. It's a homeopathic remedy that stabilizes blood pressure, circulation, heart rate, breathing. It's information to get your body moving in the right direction. When you have a problem going on around you, a lot of times your best bet is to stop and take some yourself and then give it to the people around you as well as the patient. Calm the situation down. I always recommend that people keep this and use it because it can really keep a disaster from happening. Next steps. Again, stop, let yourself breathe. And then the first thing that I do for people is administer these 3 remedies. They're basically 3 different potencies of these. There's a children's potency, which is 9 or 12x. And then you can go to adult potencies, which is 30C is a standard adult potency for an incident. You can go to a 200C, which is for a really severe situation. Those are the 3 that I keep. For emergency purposes, I always just do 200C, keep it on hand in my emergency kit, and administer it as soon as I realize there's a problem going on and someone's injured. And you can, again, add it to the homeopathic rescue remedy and take it yourself. And then you administer your cayenne. And then in about 5 minutes of cayenne and pressure over the wound, you lift it off and you see, has the bleeding stopped or slowed? If it's a slow ooze and it's not spurting, you've got your bleeding under control. And you can then you assess for transport. Do I need to get this person to a hospital? And if you don't have a hospital, what I do after that, we'll get to that next. But the one thing that really you can't really make decisions about is spinal or head injury. If that you think they might have injured a spine or have a head wound, you just use ice, stop bleeding, stabilize them, and get some professional help. Those are things we can make worse if we don't know what we're doing. But it's always helpful to get the bleeding stopped because then that buys you time to get them help. If you know there's no head wound, there's no bleeding, no spinal injury, then it's time to clean the wound. Remember though, you cut your head open, no matter if it's minor or deep, if there's an open wound on the head, it's gonna bleed like a stuck pig. It is the scariest injury for parents when their kids hit something and there's blood coming down their face and down their shirt. That does not mean that it's a dangerous situation. Head wounds just bleed and bleed and bleed, especially up front. Bright red blood everywhere. So assess your bleeding after you've done the initial steps. If the wound is just oozing, a lot of times you've got it under control. So just know about that with a head wound. So once your bleeding's under control anywhere on the body, it's just a slow ooze. You want to take off your towel, your bandage, and disinfect. Apply your repair herbs, which you can get in powder form or you can get in other forms. And then you cover the wound and do this again twice, 3 times a day. And you're going to repeat this process until the wound is closed, changing your bandages, the things that most people do at home anyway. It's always good to, if you think there's infection or might be possibility of infection, is to take your herbs for infection internally. 4 times a day, take a dose of herbs for infection, and that will stop local infection in the wound. And then if you have pain that's keeping you use, and as things heal, they itch, manage your nerve pain, manage your itching, manage your pain, and take something for pain. Because if you can't manage your pain, then you can't rest, then you can't heal. Okay, so open wounds, if you can't go to a hospital and there's something very serious, these are the things you will do. First of all, number one, stabilize the body and do your best to stop that bleeding using your ABCs. And if you were to have maybe an impaled object or a bone that you can actually see is broken, once you've stopped the bleeding, you can, and you know you can't get somewhere, you can remove that object or straighten out the bone and start over again. Manage your bleeding, your pain, ice, more cayenne, apply pressure to the wound so the bleeding stops. And then, because you can't get anywhere or you don't want to, this is your best tool to keep on hand. It's a combination in equal parts of comfrey, honey, and wheat germ oil. It's an old tool. I keep this made up in my refrigerator. And you take this, and it's a little bit greasy right now. It looks like that. And you can just put a thick layer of that over a wound, put a clean bandage on it, and it is the very, very best tool for closing a wound that's very deep and should probably get stitches or needs medical therapy and you can't get there. My son did this when he was pretty young. He jumped out of a car onto hot pavement with bare feet in the middle of the summer. And within a few minutes had terrible blisters all over the bottom of the soles of his feet. He was screaming and crying. And we were in a parking lot far from home. We found ice. We packed his feet on ice. And we got him home. It was late. And we did all of this. We cleaned him off, got all the debris out of there, soaked him with disinfecting herbs to do that, put honey, wheat germ, and cayenne on it, put this mixture of honey, wheat germ, and comfrey root all over that wound, put a bandage. I gave him stuff for pain, put him to bed, and in the morning, which he didn't wake up over the course of the night, he said, "Oh, that don't really hurt." We fed him and got our day started, undid the wounds, and they are closed. The wounds are starting to heal back together. So again, took off any excess of that paste that I put on there, put a clean bandage, and in 3 days, my son was out playing in the park with his friends. I mean, it's really amazing how well this stuff can help. So I'm going to show this to you again. Honey, wheat germ oil, and comfrey root in equal parts in a jar in your fridge. It'll last forever like that. Doesn't go bad. Have it ready and on hand, especially if you're far from emergency care. Okay. And then you're going to keep managing infection and stay on top of it. Treat it a couple of times a day. What does it mean to have infection? This next slide is, what are signs of infection? Most of us know that. Sharp pain, pus or closed pockets or draining, radiating heat, red streaks coming off it with a lot of swelling and pain, body aches, fever, and lymph nodes underneath your arms and your neck and in your groin that are swollen and painful. That's sign of infection. So the things you can do, number one, start your herbs for infection early, 4 times a day, but also soak in the tub, keep cleaning those wounds. And if after 24, 48 hours, you're not eliminating it, you get your doctor, you get some antibiotics. Antibiotics save lives. We don't always need them, but they do save lives. Okay, so now we're going to go to closed wounds, which is we all fall, bumps and bruises, injure a joint, tweak of this, tweak of that, and it's not bleeding. That's a more common injury than all this other stuff. And here's your protocol. Start with arnica, ice, and if you're stressed, rescue remedy. You can take the hypericum and the sulfitum at the same time. Won't ever hurt you. They're messaging, they're information. They're not going to affect you chemically in any way. And then you put arnica, castor oil, and ice. And you do that for 72 hours, at least twice a day. And you would be amazed at how it manages your pain. If you need to go to work, put a brace on it so you can use it and it's supported and you're not going to re-injure it. If it's an elbow or wrist or knee or ankle, brace it up and keep doing these things. And after the first 72 hours, you do contrast therapy, hot, cold, space between them. You can do it with packs of ice, heat packs. You can do it in the baths, hot and cold baths. But always arnica and castor oil after in between your application. And at the bottom, you will see here, manage your pain. If you are in pain and you can't sleep, you can't relax, you can't rest, you can't heal, that's super important. A lot of people don't want to take anything, but that doesn't help you heal. That's why we came up with our formula and why they exist on the market. That's why these things exist. And then you increase your nutrition for healing, which is these types of herbal formulas, primarily white oak. And then you put it topically on your tissues as well, which you can use this. You can use the salves that we have. We have a repair salve. Use your tissues topically and internally, and you'll be amazed at how quickly that tweaked elbow or ankle starts to repair itself. Okay, let's move to joint pain. This is one of the things I see a lot of in my office because as we age, we tend to move and injure joints. One of my primary things I'll see in this office is sciatic pain, stenosis, or problems with repaired joints. So we're going to go in that order. Arthritis, I'm giving you a definition here because there are different kinds of arthritis, osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. Osteoarthritis is a deterioration in the joint from overuse or injury, where things are rubbing up against each other and there's pain in there because you're affecting the nerves. Rheumatoid is inflammation. It's caused by the body attacking those cells and creating inflammation, and they're treated very differently, but they're both in the joints because that's what arthritis means. Sciatica is a form of joint pain where there's pressure on the sciatic nerve. When you look at this slide, that sciatic nerve starts in the lower back and moves down through the middle of the buttocks, down the back of the knee, through the calf, and then into the heel. It often happens just on one side, sometimes on both sides, sometimes going back and forth. And the reason for that is compression in those vertebra in the lumbar spine. And the most important thing you can do to relieve sciatica pain is to get that compression, ease that inflammation on that lumbar spine. So you're looking at ice, castor oil, arnica, and baths. Ice, arnica, castor oil, and baths to get that sharp inflammation out of there and reduce your pain. And once you have enough pain reduction, you have to figure out how to lengthen those muscles and joints by doing guided exercise, by doing stretching. The other thing that you can really do for sciatica is clean out your kidneys and clean out your intestines. There are recipes for those in our general recommendations on our website, because your kidneys, when they tighten up, pull on the lower back and create that pressure. And your belly, when it's distended and swollen, is pulling forward, creating pressure on those intervertebral spaces. And a lot of times they just see you do a basic belly cleanse, you do a basic kidney cleanse, you take some baths, you do ice, arnica, and castor oil, and it's gone. And you can go forever or be managed for a very long period of time. Stenosis, repair to replace joints, are the other two things that I see. What we're looking at more with this than with sciatica is you're going to have some scar tissue. Stenosis is deterioration, breakdown of stuff. One of the things you have to remember with it is that that's a long, long-term issue in your spine. And managing your pain is really, really important. Our nerve pain salve is one of the best tools that you can have locally for any stenosis that's going on, because it's the nerves that are being rubbed continuously in there. The other thing is all the other tools we have for pain are going to work for this. Your baths, your ice, your arnica, and your castor oil. And once your pain's under control, stretching and nutrition. That's the biggest thing for stenosis. You want to augment your nutrition. You want to up your good greens, alfalfa in your diet daily. Get some kind of tissue repair formula into you daily. And then rub that stuff, the same herbs on the outside. Our repair salve is a formula like that. And with joint replacement, sometimes the issue is scar tissue. Scar tissue is inevitable. They have to cut you open to do it. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, let's go to old injuries. The biggest issue with old injuries, stenosis being one of them, joint replacement being another one. But any old injury, anything that's been sliced or broken, is going to have scar tissue, whether it was surgery or injury. And the biggest thing to do for that is castor oil and clay packs. If it's a not very deep scar, you can usually just apply castor oil twice a day, put some heat over it, and it's gonna flatten out that scar. A keloid is defined as a scar that puckers up and is bubbly on top. A puckering scar pulls in. We often have puckering scars on abdominal scars. We often have keloiding scars over bones. But they're also genetic. Some people do it more than others. And a scar that's not like that, all you generally need is castor oil. If you have an old scar that's puckering, that's pulling tissue towards it, you rub a little castor oil all over the area where that scarring is, and then you take some clay, and you make a paste up by mixing the powder with water until you get a paste. And it's going to look a little bit like that. And you rub that paste. So you're just going to take a tiny bit of castor oil, enough to moisten the skin, and then you put your clay over the area. I always use a cake spatula because I'm a baker, so you can't see the skin through it. And that's going to be what it looks like. You leave it on for 10, 20 minutes. Generally within 20 minutes, it's done all that it's going to do. And the scar will let you know when it's repaired and when it doesn't need any more clay, when it starts to itch and dry and crack in those first 15, 20 minutes. And then you're done using clay and you can continue to use castor oil after that. You never put clay down the drain. It'll clog your drains. You just take it, throw it in the trash. Then when you're done, you wash your skin and rub a tad more castor oil over the area. And usually that will release a scar. A scar on a hip or a knee or an ankle deep in your breastplate from a mastectomy. Those are going to really respond well to clay. Anything that's been there for a long time is also going to respond well to clay. So that's another incredible tool to keep in your home. Soreness from overuse is probably the most common injury that we have. We're just not ready to do something we took on. And so the most helpful things are listed here. Hydrate well and you'll be less sore. Get your electrolytes in, you'll be less sore. And you can take arnica beforehand if you know you're going to do something you're not ready for. Take your homeopathic arnica, and then when you're done, take a good bath with baking soda and sea salt. Continue taking your arnica every few hours, applying arnica every few hours. Castor oil if you really think you might have injured something. Do it especially before you go to sleep. And take your herbs for pain. Manage your pain so you can sleep well. The other thing is, if it's really sharp pain, you might have injured yourself. Start your ice. But most of the time, if you get in a bath with baking soda and sea salt, and you rinse all that off afterwards, when you dry yourself, add a little bit of arnica and castor, take your homeopathic arnica. By the time you wake up in the morning, it's all gone. It is truly amazing how well you can manage overuse pain that way, and then be able to get moving the next day. If it carries on the next day, you might want to start taking extra nutrition and continue using your arnica and castor oil and your herbs for pain. Okay, our last slide here, I'm just going to go over the basics. Number one, manage your stress, manage your breathing, use your rescue remedy, know your personal limits. Not everyone's cut out for this. Get help when you need it. Get help if you have access to it. If it's not your thing, but this is mostly designed for people who don't have access or who don't want to use those systems. Always stop your bleeding, stabilize fractures or anything that's wounded, that is broken. Keep your wounds clean, treat them, cover them, watch for signs of infection, and then use your tools, your ice, your arnica, your castor oil, your repair salve, your herbs for infection. And then take care of those injuries. Start stretching and moving them. Physical therapy is an excellent tool for recovering from these kinds of things if you have access to it. Again, be prepared. Ask for help. Be diligent once you've started and keep going until it's done. And then last but not least, really trust yourself. Be brave. Know you can do it. People have been doing this stuff forever and ever and ever. It's sometimes a matter of practice, but a lot of times it's just a matter of trusting your gut, trusting yourself, and knowing you can take care of yourself, your family, your loved ones, your neighbors, and your community. Thank you for attending our class today. We appreciate it. Give us feedback on our website, and we'll have another class coming up soon. Thank you very much.